So, first off, I just want to personally thank you for your creation of both Spawn and Venom. Your versions, and well, I should say too, your versions of Spider-Man and Venom are always the one I think of when I hear those names. So, very genuinely, thank you. You really shaped my childhood.
Oh, well, look at Tyler. The thing about having a career is that it doesn't happen unless I've got a bunch of good people like you supporting our efforts. Otherwise, you're just self-indulging in a basement on your own, right? And you're an amateur, right? So I'm equally thankful. Whatever people get out of what my work in that direction, I'm equally thankful that anybody basically spends their time and especially their hard-earned dollars supporting what I do because it's given me a career. So thanks, dude.
I think that's a very healthy mindset to have. But McFarlane Toys is celebrating its 30th anniversary, and your toys are always top of the line. So how have you guys been able to maintain that reputation for 3 decades?
Yeah, I mean, when it's getting harder. Let me say that because when we first broke in, back in '94, the art wasn't really a big deal, right? It was more about brand. If you were doing Spider-Man, as long as he was red and blue with webs on him, you called it a toy, and that was it. I also think that the collector market, which is in the sort of the geek market, which is inherently an older audience, buying a lot of times product for ourselves, right? We're not even buying them for gifts. We're like going, oh man, I need this. That it wasn't 30 years ago, wasn't quite, as a matter of fact, for sure, it wasn't quite as robust as it is today. So the toy companies were sort of making their product and selling their product for moms and 6-year-olds, right? I mean, that's what toys basically are, especially for the Fortune 500 company. And again, there were some people that were still collecting. I mean, they were collectors, and then even on the sports side, they had things like starting lineup or whatever. But I thought the art on them fell woefully short. So that was sort of the impetus of getting in. Now, we came in, the learning curve I thought was pretty quick. I mean, within about a year, I was like, oh, things started to click, and we went, oh yeah, we can do stuff that has never been seen before. But because it was successful, then you started having other people use the playbook, right? Which is fine. I that was always the plan of like, hey, if I can go out there and show that you can do it a different way and be successful, then hopefully more people will join in the party. And there'll be a ton more cool toys, because I used to go to Toy Fair and walk around, and maybe I'm a geek, and maybe there are 5 things that I would like to take home with me. And now you go to Toy Fair and or New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of toys I'd like to take home. I mean, it's staggering what you see that's out there. So because now the competition's gotten fierce, and part of it is taking some of the blueprints from my playbook, keeps me on my toes, right? So I've got to keep pushing and pushing, because there's a lot of other people that are trying to sort of do what we're doing, which, like I said, from the consumer point of view, I think is awesome, and that was always the goal. Can you just make toys across the board? Even, I would argue, Mattel and Hasbro have upped their game.
Yes.
Not to the degree that we would all like them, but they've upped their game, and or have had sort of satellite series of toys that do some of the things that we do in the collecting. But healthy competition is good. Keeps you vibrant and keeps you innovative.
One thing I've noticed with different, especially I think you guys are the whole reason for it, is a lot of the Mattel and Hasbro stuff back in the day, they would have stuff that didn't look anything like the actual person and be like, wait, what? That's them? But I think that people like McFarlane Toys and Sideshow, you guys are, since you could do such good work, it then forces them to be like, oh, well, yeah, we need this Spider-Man to actually look like Tom Holland rather than just a generic young adult.
Yeah, and the thing, Tyler, that is interesting about what you just said is it takes just as long to do it right as it does to do it wrong. The effort's kind of the same, right?
Yeah.
You got to do a face. All right, well, we're going to do a head and the face and the likeness. Might as well get it right? The sculpting time is the same. So I don't know. It was weird to me that they had all the same tools that I had at their disposal, which at the beginning was simply clay and a couple carving tools. It was clay. So they just chose not to put the clay in kind of a cool design, right? Here's the thing that's weird, Tyler, and I sort of get this to my sculptors themselves. Other than time, and I understand time, so maybe they budget time differently than I do, but other than time, it doesn't cost any more to add detail. No. Like if I do let's say Captain America and I just make it smooth, right? Okay, fine. And then I make it in blue plastic, right? I'm not even talking about paint, just blue plastic. Or I can make it so that you can see every single one of the scales that are on him, because he's got that up at the top. You got it. And then you do it in blue plastic. The plastic in the mold doesn't care what shape it's in. It's not animate. It's just an object. So it doesn't care. So if you want to do a lot of detail, and we'll make it all blue. I understand the second part of it, which is, well, if you do a bunch of detail, then we feel like you have to paint it. That costs extra money, yes. And it was one of the things that I was able to beat them at, was when I first broke into the game, historically, most of the toys had like 25 to 30 paint operations. We call them paint ops, right? And I would end up doing toys that sometimes would reach as high as 200. And so it just looked cooler because I was sculpting more detail instead of them doing flat. I was actually doing the texture, and then I was painting the texture on top of it and doing all this noodly stuff. So they could have done the same thing. I wasn't doing anything that wasn't already available. They just chose, for whatever reasons, and I'm going to guess mostly economics, that they just want, why? Like we're selling to people. Moms and 6-year-olds are not art critics, right? They just want a Spider-Man. They want a Batman. They want a Superman. Superman equal, black hair, S on the chest, and a red cape and blue leotards. Okay, fine, right? Who cares that really the muscles were in proportion? Who cares whether there was any texture? Who cares whether there was any wrinkles? Who cares any of that? They just were like, it was like a checklist, almost like a itemized checklist. Okay, we got the red cape, we got the red boots, we got the blue, we got the S, we got the blue. Okay, check. Next. Who else we got? Oh, Batman. Oh, that one's easy. Just put a bat on the chest. And then they just went through the checklist again without being mindful that it could look cooler. It could just look cooler. But anyways, good for them, because it made me and our company look way smarter than we were, given that we weren't doing anything that somebody shouldn't have been doing for 50 years prior.
Yeah. Well, changing subjects a little bit, we here at JoBlo have been chomping at the bit for news. So is there any update that you can give us on the Spawn film?
So let me just say that, like, the big news of us making the deal and us getting the money and us doing the production, that answer is coming this year, right? That's a guarantee. right? The question is just like where it lands at that
Yeah.
point. There's too much sort of momentum, too many sort of good pieces involved, right?
Yeah.
And one of the big pieces right now, I think, is that, you know, one of the main writers, a gentleman by the name of Scott Silver, who's writing the script with a buddy of his. He's the one that wrote the script with Todd Phillips, the director of Joker 1 and Joker 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is that important? Because right now Hollywood is kind of in flux, right? I mean, if you read all the headlines, they're all sort of scrambling, trying to figure out how to figure out the future to some extent. So I think that, and especially coming post-pandemic and post-writer strike and actor strike, there's a lot of sort of conservatism in terms of not maybe wanting to take big swings and big risks.
Oh.
But with that said, what they are very good at is when things work, really jumping on them and trying to replicate them or do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what that means is I think, and you and I can come back and see how far off I am on this guy. I think Joker 2 is going to be huge. I think Joker 2 may actually even be the biggest movie grossing of 2024. And I'm not saying that sort of biased because Scott's doing it, although I hope that I'm right. It will happen. But if you look at sort of what's happening in Hollywood and you go through the movies that are coming out, you got Madam Web, you know, it's a villain. I don't know that it's going to do much business. You're going to then get Kraven the Hunter, again, a villain. I don't know how much business it's going to do. And then it starts to amp up a little bit, right? And then you get Venom. Venom, we've seen 2 movies, and we know that it's going to do some business. But I don't know if there's going to be any surprises in that 3rd movie. It's going to probably, my guess, be more of what we saw in the first 2 movies.
Yeah.
And then we're finally going to get, I think, a little bit of a pop. Matter of fact, it might even be a big pop, which is Deadpool. Right? This is the order I believe these movies are coming out. Right? And then Deadpool is going to come out, and I think Deadpool is going to do really, really, really well. He has in the past. Why would he do it again? Oh, and by the way, he gets to hang out with Wolverine. Super cool. And that's an R-rated movie, not to be underestimated. And then I think the big one, and the big one is going to be right then after that in October is going to be Joker 2. And I think Joker 2, I think it's going to catch people off guard, and I think it's going to be, I mean, remember, the first movie was $1 billion movie. So this one, could it do $1 billion again in this weird climax? If it can, in the climate, excuse me, that we're in, that would almost be a magic trick to get $1 billion and R-rated, right? And Oppenheimer sort of almost got there. So could Joker 2 with Lady Gaga in it do it? And it's possible.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point about I didn't even think about the fact that the biggest comic book movies from this year, likely the most successful ones, will be rated R comic book films.
Right. And so 2 things are going to happen, Tyler. 2 things are going to happen. They're going to go, oh my gosh, we can make money again after talking about sort of the downcline of superheroes, and they might now get 1 or 2 with and you know, again, Venom might sort of start it, and then Deadpool and Joker 2 continue it, and then Hollywood's going to go, oh, we know what the answer is. I just know how Hollywood, they're just so predictable. We just need to do all of our dark, gritty ones and make them all R-rated.
Yeah.
They're just going to slap their head. Now, that's easier said than done because every character isn't built to be there in that realm, right? You put Captain America in R-rated, I don't know that it makes as much sense. So, but what it does do, it's a long-winded way coming back to the original question, is that if Joker 2 does anywhere close to what I think it will do, then people like to hang out with people who make the money. And one of the people who have made the money will be a guy named Scott Silver, who will have potentially on his resume $2 billion movies that he's helped write. And the only other human, I think, on the planet that he can compare himself to at that point is a guy named James Cameron, right? Because he got a couple $1 billion movies he wrote.
Yeah.
So there could potentially be 2 human beings, and he will be one of them. And his 2 were R-rated, so that hill was steeper.
Yeah.
And he still got a pass. He still got there. So Hollywood will do what I know they will do. Oh my gosh, what does Scott want to do next?
Mm-hmm.
And depending on whether we sold Spawn prior to that, or we sell it the Monday after Joker 2 comes out, Scott, if it does what I want, and the team, we're all going to be holding, you know what we all want to do, and Scott's attached to it, and you guys are all wondering, right? It's this thing called Spawn. So we may, I know it's been frustrating, it's been a long time and whatever else, but in an odd way, now that the time has taken so long, it may circle back and be sort of a friend to us.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew, right?
Yeah.
And we may be at the right place at the right time of Hollywood going, we got to do dark and R-rated because that's what sells. Who's got dark and R-rated? We do. And it's done by the guy who did Joker 2. Like, bam, bam, right? And, and we should be able to get this thing locked and loaded and finally go and get it turbocharged and go. So something's going to happen. Something's going to happen one way or the other. It's impossible for any of us that are involved in it to think otherwise. The question is just, when do we go out? Once we've got the final script, when do we go out and make that play? I don't know. So, but this is the year. This is the year.
Well, and are Jamie Foxx and Jeremy Renner still involved?
Until somebody says otherwise, right? Again, what ends up happening, Hollywood's again an interesting place that actors, writers, directors, everybody, producers, they all have schedules, and the windows of opportunities open and close, right? You've read about it before. Plenty of people have been attached to projects, and then other stuff come along, and something gets delayed, and you just got to show your schedule. So until somebody sort of tells me in my ear, right, that these gentlemen are not involved for whatever reason, then I assume I haven't heard otherwise. Nobody's talking to me about anybody with antsy feet.
No.
So let's go, right? And then once you do go, depending on who's involved at any given time, because there might just be a window that opens up, and the studio who's paying for the movie, and hopefully movies, will basically go, here's our opening, right? Here we're looking at our schedule, and here's our opening. We need a movie there. You need to fill that slot, and then it's like, well, to fill that slot, we got to start filming here, and the question is, who's available at that time?
Makes sense.
I mean, we'll have our script, but then in terms of actors and supporting cast and directors and cinematographers and even just the entire crew, right? So all that will be determined when the final contract is sort of inked, and we've got sort of dates that we're all climbing towards. The final answers to all these questions will then get solidified.
Well, my final question is that you've had a long and storied career. What achievement are you most proud of?
I wouldn't tie it to any single event. As I get older, which I am, I understand and have, I think, a little perspective now of what it takes to have a 40-year career, the effort to maintain it, to be in it, and then the other piece, to be relevant, right? So that's, I mean, when I look at people like the Rolling Stones or Kiss or something like that, right? I rarely argue and have a conversation about their music and whether I like it or I don't like it, or whether you like it or not. I marvel that they're still here, right? Ozzy Osbourne, right? I just directed a music video with them. That they picked the career path, and they were able to do it for 50 years and be relevant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can still play bars and whatever else. Everybody can do that. Good, cool, but still be relevant. That task is way harder than you think. And the reason I know that, because if you start thinking about people who have had 40, 50 year careers in any occupation, you can almost get them down to like a couple hands. Like, I mean, you get into short lists in every category, right? So I don't know why, to some extent, in our industry, a 60-year-old man like me is still relevant. It should be sort of taken over by a bunch of 30-year-olds that are kicking ass and doing whatever. But I guess I'm just stubborn and competitive enough, just like Jim Lee and Frank Miller and, you know, some of my other peers that are still relevant themselves. And I'm just thankful for my career. That, like, if I've got one thing, that it's like, wow, I wouldn't have said when I started that I would have had 40 years and people still cared on the 40th year.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Well, that's a wonderful thing to be proud of. And thank you so much for talking with me today. This has been a great conversation. So thank you again.